All right. I want to thank everyone for showing up tonight. I appreciate it. I know some of your coaches probably made you come, but I still appreciate you being here. I think you'll get a lot out of this. I want to introduce tonight's speaker, Dan Horan, a good buddy of mine, who is just like all of you at some point in terms of he was an athlete at Millersville University, captain of a football team, and has really changed his own life and his family's life with the way that he has brought his business to life. So I'm going to let him talk to you a little bit about his story today so you can all kind of ask questions and how he got to the point he is right now. But before I go any further, let me just introduce Dan Horan.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate that very much. Thanks for coming out. How many of you are business majors? I was sharing with Rita earlier, may go by another name, Rita, I guess, doctor, that when I was your age, I was not interested in business at all. I found it quite boring and didn't have any interest whatsoever. And over time in pursuing passions, found out that many things come around to business. So I'm the opposite today, where I encourage most people in school or my own kids is follow your passions. But if you can minor in business, major in business, take business classes, I encourage you to do all that. The one thing that Jesse and Rita and Kim wanted me to do is kind of tell my story a little bit. So giving you a brief overview. As Jesse said, I played football at what was then Millersville State College. Football was my main draw, quite honestly, going to school. I knew I wanted to get an education, but quite honestly, I was an average student. You know, they call it ADD today, which is great for entrepreneurship, not always great for sitting in the classroom. So it wasn't always something I loved, even though I always enjoyed learning. But again, football was the discipline and the structure and the environment that really helped me, again, be motivated, and stay with that. And when I got out of school, I was a communications major. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I was interested in going to New York and maybe become an actor, but, didn't have the guts at that point in my life to just move up there with nothing, knowing no one and having no money. And I guess I wasn't passionate enough to do that. And I ended up working in the music industry for a short time, probably 2 years, found out that I liked music. I've always been a music, enthusiast, and I found that I liked being a fan of music more than I liked working in it. So then from there, I went to another passion, which was teaching more counseling and coaching football. And I did that at a school for juvenile delinquents, which I loved, but as unfortunately, some of the most important jobs in the world, they aren't always the ones that pay the most. So after being there for a few years, I realized unless, unfortunately, somebody died, not to sound harsh, but that I wasn't moving up and I wanted to do something else. So as I tell the story, I'd be going for a run thinking, what else can I do for a living? I go and lift weights. What else can I do for a living? Go do some kind of exercise. What else can I do for a living? It wasn't really at that point in my life that I thought I could make exercise a career. And I bumped into somebody down the Jersey Shore at that point in their life that was going to school for exercise science. So that's what got the wheels spinning. So at 28, after already graduating from school and working a few years, I went back to school to get another degree. And I was certainly more motivated at that time because I knew what the focus was and what I thought I wanted to do. And my goal was, at that point when I say I went back to school, was to, I wanted to learn the business side, or so I thought, because I thought I wanted to be a club owner, gym owner, whatever you wanted to call that. And so that's what I did. And when I got out of school, so I was 28 when I went back to school, 30 when I started in the industry. So I often tell the folks that work with us who are 21, 22, I said, I started 30 years of age at $7 an hour. I said, you're way far ahead of where I was at that time. So it's really not about where you start, it's about the opportunity that you might have or where you might be able to go with certain opportunities. So coming out of school, the second time around, I worked as a personal trainer. I would imagine most of you know what that means. Went to people's homes, went to their places of business, worked them out. Met some very influential people, people that by most rights had a lot of success in their careers. And that was motivating to me because I was around other business owners and I was around other people. And when you're around people that might be interested or doing what you think you might want to do, you realize, okay, it's not so unattainable. It is more realistic. They can do this, I can do that. So I learned a lot from that. I worked in corporate fitness, which is basically larger companies have their own in-house fitness, but it's very medically based. There's a lot of stress testing and there's doctors there once a week. It's more the medical side being in corporate. And then, but my main goal was to run commercial fitness, which is what you would mostly know as clubs or gyms or whatever they be, because my goal, again, was to own one. And something I had read at that time, you might want to check to see if the fact is still accurate all these years later, but that 80% of all new businesses fail within the first 3 to 5 years. Rita's nodding yes, so I guess that's still accurate. So I want to say it again. 80% of all businesses fail within the first 3 to 5 years. That really resonated with me. But when the owner-operator has 5 or more years experience in that specific industry, there's a 90% success rate. So guess how many years I had running clubs before I decided to open my own? 5. I did not go any less. Also, because it also ties into later in my own career, and something that some of you may have interest in someday, is there's also a 90% success rate with franchises. So a franchise would be the easy one to show as an example is McDonald's. You know, you go, if you buy a McDonald's or open a McDonald's, it's your store, you own it, you run it, it's your business, you have your own infrastructure, but you follow the model of that business. Don't try and outthink it, follow it. If it's successful, do it right. But you know, you have to follow the brand procedures and protocols that are in place. And if it's good, that's the whole reason behind doing it, why it's a 90% success rate, because all the hard stuff's already been worked out and worked through. So after I got those 5 years experience, I got one of my personal training clients to back me financially. I grew up in Delaware County. I didn't do that part. I went to Monsignor Bonner High School. You know, middle class area, good, hardworking people, but, you know, I certainly didn't have any extra dough, and family members didn't have any extra dough to help somebody open a business. So I had a partner who backed me in that, and he had a lot of business experience, and by most standards was extremely wealthy, and I thought that was a perfect example. I'll bring the experience to the table, I'll bring the opportunity to the table, he'll bring the money, he'll guide me, and it was a power struggle from day one. And I would tell you this, it's harder when you don't come from anything, when you have to get somebody to back you financially, but the advice I would give is probably my biggest challenges over the last 30 years of my career have been through partners. So I would say if you are interested in going in business, be as careful picking your partner as you are picking a spouse. So, and that's probably Rita's nodding again. So, because that's very, very important. Sometimes, you know, you do what you have to do and you take a chance with certain people and give people certain opportunities as well. But, you know, it's just something to consider when you do that. But I was in business, unfortunately, with the wrong person for about 8 years, and every day was fight or flight. Every day was, you know, if I was sleeping at night and he wasn't, I didn't care enough. You know, if I wasn't yelling and screaming, I wasn't passionate enough. If, you know, I didn't work 15 hours a day, I only worked 12 or 13, and he was there for 15. You know, I didn't know what it took to make money, all those types of things. So, you know, I struggled with a lot of those, but you'll also be amazed going through your hardest times. You may not feel it at that time, but they're often no different than sports, what you learn the most from. And it's preparing you for something else down the road. So ironically, after those 8 years, I was always kind of looking for what was next. And as I mentioned out in the hallway, one of the discussions I had is when you own a business and you want to get the heck out of there, it's not like you're an employee and you give your 2 weeks notice and you leave. You're kind of bound. You know, you have tax issues, you have business issues, you have fiduciary duties. So that was a challenge in and of itself. But I was always kind of looking for what I thought was next. And I searched for it for a long time and had a real hard time finding it. And then my consultant had told me about Planet Fitness. Planet Fitness has been around since 1992, which ironically is when I started in the industry. But they started franchising in 2004. And he told me about it in 2005. So fortunately, I got into it at that time. And again, as I was saying earlier, my consultant said to me, if you make this move, you'll struggle like heck for a year. Hopefully in year 2, you'll get back on your feet. In year 3, you'll say, why did I wait so long? And he was right on the money. But when there's 36 months are ahead of you, in front of you, it might as well feel like 36 years because it does. You know, so again, sometimes you just have to keep your head down and be persistent. So fortunately, you know, my goal at that point was to open one club and get out of a lousy partnership and pay my bills. And, you know, I'm sharing, I'm not bragging, because most people, if they ask me how many clubs I've had, I typically don't answer. I dodge around them because then they, you know, they ooh and ah, they make a fuss, or I get embarrassed by that or whatever. But I've done 38 clubs total since then. Again, my goal was being one. And at one point along the way, I had a partner who had to get divorced. I'll tell you this, when I decided to go on my own after those 8 years at the other club, I called on a family friend who was an accountant, and I've been with him ever since. He's been the greatest advisor I could ever ask for. And then a family friend who was an attorney. And it didn't turn out that he was necessarily the right attorney. He kind of practiced a different sector of law. But the two things he said to me, ironically, he said, after all your experiences with a partner, why would you want another partner? Because when I decided to do Planet, my general manager, our general manager, the one who worked for me at the other club, said, why don't we do Planet? And I said, I already am. He goes, why don't we do it together? And the idea was that we were stronger together, which is the only reason to have a partner, and that we should be stronger together and that we could potentially do, more than one together. We could possibly do multiple clubs. But again, back to the attorney, he said to me, with partners, he said, when money gets tight, it can change people, and if you start making money, it can change people. And he also said, if somebody gets divorced, no matter how well you know them or how close you are to them, you have no control over that. And son of a gun, both of those things happen at that point. Where unfortunately, I'm not wishing, things happen. I'm not wishing bad upon anybody or talking bad about anybody. I'm just sharing life experiences with you. That both of those things happen. We finally got our feet and started making a couple bucks, and he started feeling himself and started changing his behavior. And then, fortunately, when he had to get divorced, we had to liquidate 12 clubs and start over. Wasn't the worst thing that ever happened, because when you have nothing and then all of a sudden a few years later you put a couple bucks in your pocket, it's fine. But we left a lot on the table because those clubs were all brand new, and a few years later were worth a whole lot more money. So I'm just sharing that with you. So that's kind of 35 years in about 5 or 10 minutes. I can go on sharing a lot of different things, but I wanted to kind of give you an intro because that's the one thing I was asked to do. I'd love to open it up for any questions you might have, and certainly there's other different topics. If I was in your shoes, that I would give you advice upon, or ask some things of you that you may or may not be interested in, and certainly some mistakes that I've learned from. And again, that's the things you learn the most from. Did you put your hand up? Oh, sorry, bud. Yes.
Are you just doing franchising now with Fitness, or are you doing other things that are business related?
That's a great question. The simple answer is, fortunately, after 17 years of doing Planet, we have a great infrastructure. There's a book by a gentleman, Tom Collins, called Good to Great. It talks about getting the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus. And it took me a lot of years to get there. But we have such an amazing team, an amazing, amazing team. And I always feel that we can duplicate that or replicate that in a lot of other areas. But I'm very, very careful when we're looking to go for synchronicity, not goal diffusion. Synchronicity means if it fits in and it plays into what we're already doing, like for instance, we've opened up a lot of locations. My other goal I haven't been able to accomplish yet is to buy a shopping center or buy the building, and then you're the landlord as well as the tenant, and there's a whole different avenue that goes with that, accounting-wise and everything else. We just haven't had the right opportunity, which that's not really the model, meaning for Planet Fitness Corporate early on, they never had done that except for one time. So it's still a goal of mine. But we've looked a lot at other franchises, and we've looked at a lot at other businesses. And fortunately, when I share this story, I give all the credit to my consultant for staying on me and for nudging me to get out of a lousy experience. And then Mike Grundle, who is the founder of Planet Fitness. He and his brother, and Chris Rondo, who's the CEO today. Because it's the strength of the model. It's really hard to mess it up. So I'm not sitting here to pat myself on the back. It's the model. Again, another good question. I'm very blessed, and to step back for a second, my foundation is faith, family, and fitness. And years ago, I went to Europe, and I was visiting with family members and friends of family members who were business owners. And they said, in America, you guys basically separate everything. There's work, and then there's recreation, then there's family time. You have to try and blend it a little bit. And that's much easier. That's much easier said than done, trust me. But fortunately, before there was ever working remotely, I was able to get to the position to do that. And again, the club I had before Planet, I was there, I get there 6 o'clock in the morning to work out. I'd be there from 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. at night, and I'd be there every Saturday at least, and thinking about it all the time. But I'm in the position now where I don't work in my business, I work on my business. So
What does that mean?
that means that fortunately I have the team around me that works in the business, a CFO, administrative staff, payroll manager, office manager, human resources. We have in each area that we're in 3 different states. We have a regional manager, and then we have general managers in each club, and then assistant managers underneath them. So fortunately, like McDonald's, we have great people. That's wonderful. But unlike, let's say, a restaurant where if the cook walks out the door, oh man, you're in trouble. And somebody says, hey, we're going to move on. It's like, next man up, next woman up. It's like you kind of go there. So my goal has always been to continue to create more assets. So when you do take on territories, you also have a schedule you have to keep of development. And where, again, I knew the fitness industry, learning about real estate, learning about law, learning about, all the other things that can go on behind the scenes of development and HR and everything that were all things I had to learn. So, again, I encourage you to learn as much of that you can in the meantime. But my wife would probably give you a simple answer. You just have to follow him around. He's on the phone all day. But fortunately, I can kind of do that from anywhere. But it's always basically working on new opportunities and growing the existing clubs we have, fulfilling our territory, trying to find, again, other opportunities and what's new. And it's not announced yet, but I just got approval for taking Planet Fitness to Ireland. So that's been keeping me busy. I'm working on that for 4 years and 4 months, and finally got board approval. It hasn't been announced yet. So, yes?
Are there any books that you've read or influential business that you personally looked up to that impacted your journey?
That's a great question. The question was, what books would you recommend reading? I'm paraphrasing, that have helped me. I will tell you this much, that there were a few that had a major impact on me, and ironically, when I went to Planet, the founder had 3 books that he based Planet Fitness on, and that was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. It was Guerrilla Marketing, I believe, by J. Conrad Levinson, and The E-Myth, means the entrepreneurial myth, by Michael Gerber. And when I was running clubs for somebody else as a regional manager before I went on my own, I read The Entrepreneurial Myth, and I really didn't like it. Because basically what it was about was, whether you have one business or you have 100 of them, you need to run it like a franchise, which means it needs to be about the systems. And a lot of small businesses, and it's okay, but a lot, my kids work in the summer business down the shore that does really well, and they're really busy, and everybody runs around putting out fires all day long. And I think about that because that's how a lot of businesses are. There's an expression, you're so busy sawing that you don't have time to step back and sharpen the saw. So the entrepreneurial myth is basically about that it's also the technician becoming the business owner. Technician means whether you're a plumber, a personal trainer, or a hairstylist, whatever you can think of, once you become a business owner or an entrepreneur, now you need to be a mile wide and an inch deep, which means you need to know a little about a lot and all those different avenues, and basically encourages you to do the system. So then when I read the book again, when I was starting Planet Fitness, it was like, wow, this is it, because it's just so much simpler and so much easier. And there's always risks, there's always ads, there's always challenges, but it really is a very simple model. It's about focusing on a few things and doing it right. The books I always recommend anybody I'm mentoring to read is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Has anybody ever heard that? Been around a long time. It's basically a story. I strongly encourage that. I read that at 43. It changed my life. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And as I say these things, it's not all about money, because I know a lot of people who have made a lot of money who are miserable. I know a lot of people who've made a lot of money who are incredibly happy and have done so much good in the world. They walk around with joy all day. But, obviously, you work hard for financial freedom. So when I talk about that, that's more my motive, is what good you can do and who you can help, and having your own financial freedom so that you're not grinding, 30, 40 years down the road. You're not grinding to make ends meet and pay your bills. So did that answer your question? So Rich Dad, Poor Dad, The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, Think and Grow Rich, and then Millionaire Next Door was the one that really had a lot of impact on me as well. Anything else? Yes?
Who is Planet Fitness' competitors?
That's a great question. The beauty is, in our industry, prior to Planet Fitness, when you heard about somebody selling a low-price membership, it was usually a going out of business sale. So I used to write articles in trade magazines because the club I had before Planet was $100 and some enrollment fee and $62 a month with a 12-month commitment. I was trying to be a higher end club, and was in organizations with other club owners about elevating the industry and helping each other out and not beating each other up, and don't sell on price, because if you sell on price, you're devaluing it for everybody. So Planet came along, it turned all of that completely upside down. So a few years later, when I'm in Planet, my youngest brother came to me and said, "Dude, I'm looking at these old articles you wrote, and you're talking about don't sell on price. Now you spend $10 a month. What do you have to say for yourself?" I said, "I was pushing the ball uphill for all those years. Now let's give them more value than they've ever seen and wow them with that." So what has happened is Planet created a low price sector, became the leader of that. LA Fitness is basically the leader in the middle price sector, and then Lifetime, so there's now one or two in this area, is the leader in the high end sector. And the fortunate thing in our industry, prior to Planet, I hope I'm not too loud for you. Prior to Planet, basically we would only track 7.5% of the population. So you had a club and had 7.5% of the population. I go across the street, now we're splitting 7.5%. Somebody else comes down the street, we're in trouble. We're now cutting it into thirds. 80% of our clientele has never exercised before. 80%. So we, as a whole, have created our own market. So that's how we're able to do it. We're able to do it on volume because of the environment, number one. It's a marketing company first and foremost, but because of the environment and the culture, number one, and then price falls in behind that. Just real easy barrier entries, and that's how we can end up with 10,000 members in a club. And whatever the number is now, there's almost 2,500 locations, and I forget how many millions of members there are now. So the simple answer is, you're always better if there's no competition, of course. The only thing we're always you keep in mind, I don't want to say hesitant, if there's 4 real good clubs in an area, I don't want to be the 5th club in that area. It's going to take so long to get going. So we're always cognizant of competition, but the fortunate thing is we've created our own market and we kind of run our own race. And I don't ever want to sound or come across as smug saying that. It's the reality of, again, the strength of the brand. Yes? Sure, bro.
I wanted to ask you if you had to take a loan in order to open your first franchise, and if so, is it something that you recommend doing or avoid?
So what was the last thing?
Or avoid, like, would you recommend taking loans or being in debt to open a business, or is something you think you should avoid?
There's good debt and there's bad debt. And that's one of the things that Rich Dad, Poor Dad comes about. I get on a soapbox for a little bit, like I do with my own guys, is, credit card debt, except for starting a business or paying your way through school, is stupid. It's dumb. You're spending money you don't have. I get off my soapbox. So to open a business that you think is a good, viable business, do whatever it takes. Do whatever it takes. Do whatever it takes. As many credit cards as you can, get as many loans as you can, do whatever. So my simple answer is yes, don't fear that, because that's good debt. That's something that, you can lose everything too. So I know everybody does it, but that's something that could potentially have benefits tenfold for you. Me personally, that was, when I had my defining moment on the day that I knew I wasn't going to stay where I was any longer before Planet, and called my consultant. I said, all right, I had it. Today was the day. And he said, you have to get up to New Hampshire, which means Planet. And I wasn't motivated at that point. I was like a beaten dog. I was like, I already did the living off credit cards and starting over at the age of 35. Now I'm 43. I don't fight doing this again. And he just listened to me. He goes, you got to get yourself a little angel investor, and you have to get up to New Hampshire. So God rest his soul, my father, who never had anything, later in life was able to buy a house down the shore and had some equity in that. And I was able to sit with him, and he had a little home equity line of credit. And he lent me some money on that. And then basically I got a small business administration loan, which is really, you still have to sell yourself. I mean, part of the reason that the gentleman put his trust in me was because I sold him on, not selling sounds negative, but I basically persuaded him on the strength of the brand, even though it was brand new, because I put him in touch with other franchisees. I put him in touch with the founder, creator. My accountant highly recommended me just for character integrity, because that goes a long way. Your credit report, all that stuff goes a long way. And then just experience, that I had a lot of experience in the industry prior to. So it's back to what we were saying earlier. You just have a higher percentage of being successful. So, so the Small Business Administration, if you've ever heard of that, there's SBA loans. And, and I did one and I never did one again because they're really cumbersome. Because the government's involved. You're going to tie up everything, but that's okay getting started. But then when you can get behind that and your business is standing on its own and your own net worth is standing on its own, you try not to do that, and you try not to give up equity if you don't have to. Oftentimes you take on a partner, they're going to bring the money and you're going to have to give them X% of your business. And a lot of times it makes sense. So there's not always a hard and fast answer, but hopefully does that answer your question? Yeah, but don't. Yeah, just do what you have. If you think it's good enough, do whatever you have to do.
How do you determine where to put one of your businesses? Do you use marketing expertise? Do you use strategic thinking? How do you decide? You just talked about, well, here's Planet Fitness, and now Mommy's here, and wherever.
Wayne, PA.
So how do you know?
Wayne and Devin.
So many franchises. How do you know where to put your franchise?
That's a great question. Trying to give you a simple answer. The beauty of Planet, again, is it's really hard to mess up. So as I've gotten other people into it, friends and family, and have helped people, it's almost like there's a formula. If you have X amount of people, and now it's more retail. I'm trying to give you, again, this is 17 years, I'm trying to concise into one answer. In 2005, it was fined a $5 a square foot site, offering them $6. Our first club was an old plastic factory, that we're still in today, that we're looking to move, because now it's find Target and be next door. But we don't want to spend $20 or $30 a square foot. We'd like to get it for 12 or 13 or 15. So it's evolved over time, but most of it you kind of figure out on your own if you can get the right real estate people, which I've been able to do over years. And then Planet's evolved over the years, because I went from dealing with the original founders to it eventually went private equity. If that doesn't mean anything, please let me know. I'll explain that. And then now it's a public company. So there's a lot more layers of structure and support. So with a franchise, you should get help on those things. But so it's usually, but again, it's evolved because we were like originally a suburban model. And then my good friend in New York City was the one that first started doing them in the cities. And again, the spaces are different. They're on several floors. They're smaller. They're larger rents, but, paying double the rent what you normally, that you're never going to spend. If you're at a bus stop between Manhattan and the Bronx, you can make up that difference. The simple answer is yes. So there's been a lot of things that have evolved over the years. Our cost of building clubs and our rents have gone up over the years, but fortunately the model can still sustain it, and we're kind of outpace competitors or those that are trying to copy the model. But so we have real strong real estate people. One guy in particular I've been working with for as long as I can remember that just knows it. And then when you have certain areas that you're targeting, because I have, for instance, I have Chester County in Pennsylvania, I have Baltimore City, 3 counties south of there, and another, and then the Eastern Shore, and I have in Illinois, I have 2 counties. So when you immerse yourself in a county, you know every square foot, you know every shopping center, you know every retail center, you know what's up, you know every landlord. So it really kind of becomes a matter of addition by subtraction, just trying to figure out where to go. Did that answer your question? Okay.
Do you have any advice for like upcoming college grads on like finding a career that they're really passionate about or just a career in general?
It probably flip that right back is go with your passions. As I was joking earlier, love music, so I wanted to go that way. Then I went the coaching route, and then, was exercising all the time, thinking, what can I do? I would strongly pursue you to pursue whatever passions you have, but also be very pragmatic about that, because some industries you're just setting yourself up for if there's not a lot of opportunities to make money in it, then it's hard, And there's an expression that if you have a business that isn't making money after 3 years, it's not a business, it's a hobby. So whether that's a business or, it's great to do volunteer work. You don't want to work 50 hours a week and just barely get by. So do you have certain passions? You have things that you're passionate about? You don't know? And that's okay. That's okay. That's the simple answer. That's probably not giving you enough yet, or just something that you see that might interest you. You know, if you see an interest, if you see a business that you like what it's all about. You know, a business that we had looked into recently, again, because our real estate guy was helping them out, was a business that employs all physically and mentally challenged folks. And it's a franchise. So we really started looking into that to diversify, and I have a nephew with special needs. I was going to put him involved with it. And the challenge was, though, that as a new franchise, they have to be very careful because they can't promise you that you're going to make X amount of dollars or what you're going to do. But if you're going to make an investment for $800,000, you need to know what potentially it's going to be. So that was kind of our rub and still is. And I was talking to other franchisees, and you wouldn't get much, which seemed a little odd. I get it, but, playing in the early days, we all just helped each other out, And if people liked it, and all of a sudden they had a life, and they had time in their hands, and most guys, girls were the same way, that the clubs they had prior to playing it, they were in it all of the time. So all of a sudden, the model of Planet, the first time I went up there, the founder said to me, as an owner, stay out of your clubs because you get in the way, and don't have meetings because they're a waste of time. And I said, where do I sign? Because the clubs I had, that's all we did, was have emergency meetings all day, and we were there day and night, night and day. And it's funny because my father, again, God rest his soul, you never have to be in it? And the answer is no, you don't. You don't, because your manager, the system's strong enough to have a manager, the models are simple enough that you should have a manager that's autonomous, that runs it as his own, and you just have systems again. As long as the numbers are there, it's there. So the point, going back to this other franchise, is I just wasn't confident in it yet, but just keep looking, and there's always a law of attraction. Just asking that question and thinking about it, and reading something in the magazine may give you an idea, and you may look into a business. And I'll leave you my email address if you ever have a question. What do you think about this business? If I don't know, I can find out. Just have the resources of other people to see whether it makes sense to give something a shot or not. Anybody else? Yes.
You mentioned that the first year, your first play of business was really difficult. In your experience, what was so difficult about that first year? What was your biggest lesson?
The biggest challenge is fast forwarding. Once you have, I'll call it a team underneath you and a farm team, if you will, then it takes care of itself. Anytime you go to a new market with just one club, you're just really, really busy. Because you open a club with, let's say the first club opened up, nobody knew what they were doing. You know what I mean? Because I couldn't take somebody from another club. Second club, take people from that club, take them down there and train them. Oh, now we have a computer system that we can, we don't have to enter them all manually. We can do them this way. Things just got easier that way. So the simple answer is just a lot of running around. And the model, even though people were very skeptical initially, no club had ever seen the volume. So it was just keeping up the volume. Like some days we would sign up over 100 people. It's hard to do. Like we used to joke in the club I had prior to that, when you're signing somebody up, I'm dating myself with a Gilligan's Island reference, but there used to be a song that talked about a 3-hour tour. And that's what we called ours. Because by the time you walk somebody through and you explained everything you did, it took you forever. And the idea of Planet is just, you got to be able to handle the volume. Just like people coming in to use it, the way it's built, the way it's designed, it's all about usage. So the biggest challenge was not knowing what we were doing yet, if that answers your question, and also just dealing with the sheer volume. And then you just have to have poise under pressure. It's not going to be perfect all the time. You're going to get, I don't like the word overwhelmed, because that means it's control. Is stimulus overload. So there was a lot of that. Then we got to the point where once we got a few clubs under our belt, that was pretty smooth. And then at one point early on, for the first time, opened 4 clubs at the same time, and that development was a nightmare. I knew what it should cost, I knew what it should look like, but I had no idea all that could go wrong. Anybody that knows anybody in construction or has family construction would snicker, like, yeah, you dummy, how did you not know that? I hadn't done it yet. And so then I was like, all right, I need help there. So I ended up getting the guy who's still with me today, who's now our chief development guy. And then we got to a point where, I don't have the best personality for, when the bank's asking you for the same information 10 times, when you're trying to get financing, you're trying to work on, other big picture things, and then finally realized, okay, we got the running the clubs down, now we got the developing the clubs down, now I need strength here, and that's when I was able to kind of bring somebody up through the ranks that became a controller and then eventually became a CFO, and now they handle all of the financing, you know. So kind of a long-winded answer to that. Yes?
You have all these franchises. Have you ever thought about another franchise? I know you just mentioned the one dealing with special needs, but a different type of franchise. You've evidently been successful here. Could you take that success into a different franchise?
We've looked, and quite honestly, when I first got into franchising, I had people that knew me say, yeah, you're stubborn. You know, why would you ever do a franchise? They're telling you what to do. And my thing was, you know, I had to come up with every promotion every week in the other club I had. And we had to come up with the logo and come up with the name, which sounds neat and fun and cool and all that, but you're always trying to figure it out rather than being figured out for you. So that's my plug for franchises. The simple answer is yes, but it's hard to find ones that match it just for the simplicity. You know, when you get into food and there's some food, like I looked into crumble cookies. Have anybody seen crumble cookies around? Because all of a sudden they're real hot. Looked into them. And again, they're very, very, very successful. But in Planet, we have 20,000 square feet with 10,000 members, and there's 12 people that work there total. You open this little tiny store, you have to hire 50 people to get going. And when I went in, and I'm not criticizing because it does really well, I'm trying to contrast. And I went in, I observed it for an hour, and it was just chaos. Again, because of the volume, because of the success, because of the excitement and the energy and all that. And I was just watching all this go on. I'm like, any one of these kids will walk out of here any minute now. Like, no way, I'm out of here. And unfortunately, I had friends that got into it, and they brought people in from another state to go train with another friend of theirs up in New Hampshire, put them up for a whole week, trained them, did the whole deal, spent money on them. And then when they opened their club, it was so crazy and so hectic that both managers walked out the door after 5 days. So again, not trying to criticize Crumble. The point is, whether it's food, whether it's waste, whether it's other, where there's a lot more employees, where there's a lot more detail and a lot more challenge, it's been hard to find something that's as simple and also that I'm personally passionate about. You know, food always scares me a little bit. Scares the wrong word. Food always, you know, I'm always concerned with a little bit. So if it is food, I want to keep it simple, you know. But a lot of them are food franchises. But the ones I've looked at, it's just, I just think, why work twice as hard to make half the money? Does that make sense? You know, so it kind of comes back down to that. If it gives somebody else an opportunity, I'll look at it. I tried another fitness franchise, not personally because I'm not even allowed, but for another family member, and unfortunately, it failed. Doesn't mean it wasn't good. It just wasn't right to fit, wasn't the right people, wasn't strong enough. It was kind of new and getting going. Yes?
Is there an online component to Planet Fitness, like during the pandemic, like putting things online?
Yes. Yes. The simple answer is, and I'm not a digital whiz by any means, but the simple answer is that we had to. You know, our clubs were shut down for 6 months, 8 months, some markets for a year, which is just insane. But we started online, we started training online, we started programming online. So that's one of the pluses that came out of the pandemic. And then since then, it's been so hard to hire trainers, which didn't used to be a problem. Because it's a cool environment, it's a fun environment where, you know, most environments you have to sell personal training, it's high pressure and all that. You don't have to do that. You got to take care of people, and so we never had trouble getting that. So since the pandemic, where a lot of people are having employment issues now, it's almost like that digital component that you asked about that we had to create out of necessity has really helped, where even if we don't have the trainers or enough trainers, we have the online component, we have the digital component that handles a lot of that.
Yeah,
So.
I think some of our business students have asked about, and they're like, hey, I'm going to try to do, you know, online personal training, see how that works. That's why I was interested.
Okay, okay.
If that's a viable market, you think would be beneficial to do.
My simple answer is yes. Ironically, before Planet, most clubs had everything, if you will. You know, you had to have babysitting, you had salespeople, you had, dating myself on purpose, you had aerobics, you had spinning, you had this, you had that, you had the other, you had personal training, you had all these things. Kind of like a grocery store. If your EFT, your monthly dues coming in, could cover most of your overhead, your 5 profit centers is what put you over the top. Planet, it's just all about the membership. You're not managing all those different things, so that's something that was a big factor. But so when we, went to the simplicity of Planet, my consultant at the time said, mark my words, you're going to see a lot of boutiques pop up. As Planet becomes the leader and doesn't have group fitness and doesn't have spinning and doesn't have this or that or the other. And sure enough, that's what happened. Now, again, the interesting thing with franchising is early on, it was all gym owners that got in, and most of them had to convert their existing clubs. And once it was established, you had people that just, back to the 90% success rate, came in that weren't in the industry before doing it. So I had many of them saying, these boutiques are opening up. I think we should have aerobics. I think we should have this, we should have that, all those things. And I had to sit down and say, consultant told me back in 2005 that this was going to happen, so let's not chase what we created. So it's just kind of the industry. But yes, the boutiques are very, very, very popular, and I think online is definitely a way to go. Definitely. And we're bricks and mortar, so I say that both ways. People want the experience of being with people, and that's what's come, is Peloton really made a big push during the pandemic, and a few other things did. I forget what the one's called, Tonal, I think, where it's basically a mirror. But now that things are back, the bricks and mortar is coming back. But do I think that that's for a boutique, for a smaller business, is an option? I do. Is there anybody here that's interested in potentially owning their own business someday? Any idea what? All right, that's a good answer. I would strongly encourage it.
Ironically enough, the other day I was thinking maybe a couple of years if I could progress my career, because I wanted to get to a Reedus franchise.
Okay.
You have to have a certain number that I obviously don't have, so I was like, once I progress in my career, I can go Reedus franchise.
I looked into that recently, very extensively, so I can give you some insight on that as well. And then again, our accountant's been working with so many businesses over so many decades, he can kind of give you the pros and cons of that. But if I can help any of you guys, again, I'll have Jesse send it out, my email. You can certainly give that to whomever. Reach out to me anytime if I can help you. Remind me, who you are, what it was about, but if I can help you in any way, whether now or 5 years from now, I'll be happy. Don't ever be afraid to approach people, because I've never met a successful person yet. I'm sure they're out there, but I've never met a successful person yet who isn't willing to help somebody who's on the way up because somebody helped them along the way. Nobody makes it by themselves. No one. And usually people that enjoy what they do are passionate about it, enjoy helping somebody. Like Jesse's thanking me up and down for coming in. I'm like, I enjoy this. I enjoy talking about what we do. Enjoy, people who want to learn about business. It's something that's fun. Can be, should be. Anything else? So we talked about some of the books. Again, would strongly encourage if you are interested in something, get as much experience as you can in it before you try doing it on your own, again, or go franchising. And again, if I can help out in any way, please let me know. Thanks for your attention, and the questions were great. Thank you. Oh, you're very kind, man. Swag gets you everywhere.
All right, everybody, thanks so much for coming out. Like I listened to Dan talk, and I've had him speak when I was teaching sports management, and he had spoken to classes before, so I knew what his story was and how he could help you all. If anyone has any questions that they want to relay to him, email me. I'll make sure that I get an answer back.